Hello everybody, welcome to our first semi-final of Pro Tour Magic 2015. We are going to bring you all the action here in the booth. Rich Hagan sitting alongside Brian David Marshall and Louis Scott Vargas. It is even Floch against Owen Turtenwald. There is the Slovak national champion in the blackborder.com shirt, even Floch. There's Owen Turtenwald from Channel Fireball, and the players are ready to go. BDM, what is the matchup?
Well, this is blue-white control versus black-white mid-range, and it's really like Ivan Floch is playing a creatureless deck that really is just about boring his opponent to death.
Yeah, it's not even creatureless, it's just creatureless. It's win conditionless. It doesn't even have Elspeth. So his way of winning is basically Elixir of Immortality and just casting a giant Sphinx's Revelation every single turn. In reality, it finishes the games with Jace's Ultimate most of the time,
right.
But
he gets to play your best remaining threat out of your deck.
Yeah, and Owen here has actually the start that he needs to win this, depending on what Even has to answer it.
We have a turn 2 pack rat, but we also have an end of turn 2 last breath. The 4 life points for Owen Turtenwald, not relevant in the slightest. The no pack rat, hugely relevant for even Floch.
Right, in untimed rounds, Floch could let his opponent start at 100.
Yeah, he could let his opponent start at any amount. He would just deck them. So this matchup in game 1, I think, is pretty good for Even because Owen has, a bunch of dead removal spells and Even has no targets for any of them. Owen's going to end up, really, really wanting to win this game 1 and having a much better post-board game.
Turtenwald attempts an Underworld Connections there, by the way, gets dissolved.
Yes, not allowed at all. So no card advantage engine for the non-blue-white player, as Even draws a 3rd island.
And one of the main features of Even's deck is that he's got 4 quickens to power out Supreme Verdicts, Divinations, and Planar Cleansings, which means that Obsidat, traditionally a really good threat against blue-white, it's actually way more vulnerable. Quicken Supreme Verdict is actually a really good combo.
Right.
I can't tell you how long I've waited for Quicken to be good.
So Owen casts his 3rd spell of the game. We've seen Pack Rat, that died. Underworld Connections, that didn't resolve. Now here's his 3rd spell. It's Desecration Demon. That does resolve. And one thing we can be certain of, at least at this stage, is that even Floch will not be tapping it down and putting +1 counters on it. So the Desecration Demon piles in for the first damage of the match against the Slovak national champion.
And Even could have answered it with a number of different things, but he's going to get a... Yeah, this is going to just be brutal here.
So there's Obsidat Ghost Council for Owen.
Yeah, but it's just Even perfectly walked into the Quicken Supreme Verdict to just wipe out both of these threats.
Here we go. Quicken,
Yep.
card,
You hear Owen.
Supreme, bye.
Wow.
And Owen didn't really have a choice, I don't think. Just sitting there on the 1 demon is just not going to be enough to finish the game before a giant revelation comes out to seal the deal.
Turtenwald, you see, holding 2 Banishing Light and Desecration Demon. That is even Floch. There's Turtenwald with those 3 cards in hand right now.
And even Banishing Light, which would normally be good against blue-white, doesn't have very many targets because Even's not playing Detention Sphere.
Right. But he chooses to run Planar Cleansing, where a lot of the other decks are running Detention Sphere.
Yeah, that's the big choice here, the big difference. And Even really only has Jaces, but if he Jace -2s and then it gets Banishing Light, that's perfectly fine.
Worth saying that although Even does not run creatures in the main deck, he does have Mutavault, which of course can become so. We're going to see Quicken again from Floch. This is with Desecration Demon number 2 coming down for Owen.
And even though you don't really want to dissolve Desecration Demons in general, I think Even should do it here, and this is why he does. He doesn't actually have an answer to it. He's got a Planar Cleansing, he's missing a 3rd white, and Demon hits pretty hard. Owen is not particularly threat dense, so taking the risk of just dying to a Demon is not very good.
A key pillar of the Even Floch deck has just entered his hand. It is a very unassuming little artifact, the kind of thing that all good players suggest really you shouldn't play terribly often in most formats. It's Elixir of Immortality, and this could be Even Floch's ticket to immortality.
Yeah, well, Even's going to sit back on that. He plays Divination, draws into his first Sphinx's Revelation. Now, does he have to get that Elixir down on the table now? Like, he can never afford to let that card sit in his hand, can he?
Getting Thoughtseize is pretty awkward. It's tough to win if your Elixir gets Thoughtseized and you've already cast some revs, because Jace can win you the game. It's a little bit slow, though. So I think Even would rather play it, and because he's not anticipating tapping out this turn, he can just shuffle it back in to make sure it doesn't get Banishing Lighted. But even if it does, he can eventually unlock it off Planar Cleansing.
So there it is. 2, tap, you gain 5 life. Well, the 5 life can be very important, but shuffle it and your graveyard back in. You never deck yourself. You can Revelation your deck as much as you want. And now here, just after the Elixir comes down, is indeed Thoughtseize from Owen.
And that was a perfectly timed Thoughtseize. Owen drew it this turn, cast it to get rid of the Revelation that was going to basically end the game next turn, or at least put even in a very good position. A Rev for 4 or 5 against an empty board is really tough to beat.
And even says, I tell you what, I'm just going to crack my Elixir of Immortality. I'll put that Sphinx's Revelation back into my deck, give myself more chance of drawing one of those, because, as we say, BDM, you were talking with Frank Carsten at the start of the morning on the news desk set, and said, look, give us a pointer at home. Right. When are things sort of over? And Frank said?
Frank said your opponent is Lost in the Woods, their team name, once you get the first Sphinx for 6. Although he was really specifically talking about the red matchup, but right. I think it applies.
I think
all the way across the board.
Yeah, I think if he even draws Rev and just casts it for 4 here, he's probably just going to win the game. Just because Owen isn't actually pressuring him. Owen has 3 of those, dead removal spells we mentioned in his hand right now.
Well, he's going to just cycle through Azorius Charm, and
here we go.
Planeswalker time.
First Planeswalker of the game.
And that comes in with 4, but instantly the dice moves to 2, and we see 2 land and a Divination. It is the card draw spell for 3 mana that Floch chooses. 2 lands go away. Owen will use the end of turn to cast Hero's Downfall.
And it's vastly preferable to Hero's Downfall rather than put Banishing Lights into play, because they're just a liability against the Planar Cleansing. It's an even hands.
And the Planar Cleansing's there.
Yeah, so Even is basically playing the game he wants to play right now.
Up at 17, about to draw bonus cards. We see a Syncopate in hand. He draws both a Divination and Sphinx's Revelation, the first one coming back, as it were. Owen's version of what can I find around the deck revolves around temples. You saw one last turn that he got to scry, put something to the bottom, but that, of course, cannot compete with the pure card draw of Floch.
You tweeted something earlier today when Matt Sperling scooped up his cards in a game against Even Floch that, they were still playing the game, and Even wasn't, was going to eventually defeat him. And, the game could have actually gone on for an hour. What is there a point where you're just like, I can't play this game anymore?
You basically never want to scoop in the top 8 of a Pro Tour until you're dead, because there's no time limit. You're not, you always have a chance. But when your opponent's casting a Revelation for 10 every turn, I think at that point, you have to think about your life equity. Like, you want to actually do other things with it at the time you have remaining in the day.
Blood Baron of Viscopa gets syncopated by Even Floch.
And the turn before you cast the Rev, you'll basically counter almost everything, because you assume Rev will draw you a bunch of answers, and you want to spend as few mana as possible. So not even content with casting a Rev for what, like 6 here.
So we go again with Jace, and we see, obviously...
I'll take the Supreme Verdict land pile over the Supreme Verdict pile.
One of the easier choices of Floch's weekend so far. Head back to Turtenwald. He's drawn Underworld Connections.
And that's, basically the best card he can draw in this situation, especially since Even does not have a direct answer to it, but Even's still going to just power through with a Rev. He could cast Planar Cleansing, but that is not really that thrilling.
Owen down, in air quotes, to 23.
Cool.
But again, really not about Owen's life total.
No, basically at no point is Owen's life total going to be relevant to the outcome of the game.
Yep.
I love how the Jaces just get...
Oh, it's just a double divination. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, he's just like, do it, throw it away. I can cast this Jace 9 times this game. Takes the dissolve pile.
Yeah, Last Breath and land goes away. The dissolve is obviously hard.
And if Owen doesn't play a big threat this turn, this is the turn I'd expect the Revelation to happen, but it looks like Floch is just content to keep trading 1 point. I guess given that he found the dissolve and doesn't have just Syncopate, this gives him just another turn to stop Owen's threats.
Cast Planar Cleansing to deal with Underworld Connections.
Oh, 1 for 1. What's wrong with that?
Attack.
Mutavault comes in. Even will fall to 15.
I think now might be the turn where he casts Revelation. I think 8 is enough to satisfy just about anyone.
He's very patient, though. We'll see. In
Yes.
we go again.
I'm at 13.
13.
Nope. No. You people are just so impatient.
Pretty hard to turn down 8 cards, but Even has managed to do it.
Put that back on top of your library.
Owen might just cycle Devour Flesh here. Basically, use Devour Flesh to not draw Mutavault next turn. This is a pretty hopeless position for Owen.
Go.
And now that Even knows Owen is basically drawing a dead card, well, Divination actually does give you a good reason to forestall the Revelation, because Even's deck does have a lot of air in it, a lot of cycling cards, a lot of removal that's not going to do a whole lot right now. So casting the as big a Revelation as possible is kind of what you want to do.
Yeah, we had an earlier quote from Rich. He said the only thing control players like to do more than drawing cards is discard them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In comes the Mutavault again, but this is not a series of relevant attacks. Perhaps most relevant is now we've got so many land on Floch's side of the
Is
board.
it time?
The 12th one is just heading down.
It's got to be
the bottom
time,
of the
right? I
screen.
mean, there we go.
9.
20.
And Owen is not someone who I'd expect to concede until the game's over. So,
Going to mentally exhaust his opponent by making him just play out every single action of this match.
yeah, it's possible.
Are we going to end up breaking out 99 bottles of beer at some point during this match?
I don't drink.
Did Even not find a land among those millions of cards? Oh, there you go.
There we go.
I'm surprised that his hand hasn't been updated yet.
Oh, you are not kind.
More quickly, Floor Reporter, more quickly.
I mean, at this
2
point, Even's
force-
got all the divination or all the dissolves, like quickens plus wrath that can even kill Mutavault if he needs to. Like,
It's basically two-headed giant right now. It's turn 7. Both the blue-white control players have 6 land in play and a full grip of cards.
the only way Even can lose right now is if that elixir gets Thoughtseize somehow, and even then, it's not a guaranteed thing because of Jace Ultimate.
Discard. Yep.
Yep. So here we go. Here's the discard. I'll tell you the entire starting hand he's about to get rid of.
He's going to keep the 4 dissolves. He's going to keep the Rev, and now he has to keep his next. Well, another.
Another rev, and maybe a syncopate.
Syncopate's getting a little less good because of how many lands Owen has, but Even has millions, so maybe Syncopate's fine. Just having all counters is not
Last
bad.
breath for a random Mutavault.
The last breath answering the Mutavault actually would be my selection here.
So he's going to keep a hand, discard a hand. It's like a conspiracy card. Draw 2 hands. Pick
Just
one.
discard one of them, yeah. It's like he casts Memory Jar, but then just gets to keep 7.
I don't know if you guys are movie fans.
I've been known to watch a televisual experience now and again.
This reminds me of the bottomless chair scene from Casino Royale.
A lot of people refer to these as awkward silences, but I'm here to tell you it's actually a choice.
Gonna discard these wraths. Is playing on cleansing.
Yeah, Even just discarded a hand
Yeah.
that
There
was
we
better
go.
than something that Owen could beat.
So with a net +3 in the life total column here in game 1, Even Floch leads Owen Turtenwald by 1-0.
Do you pick your discard hand based on maximum
Tilting,
demoralization?
like he keeps 7 lands and discards like amazing cards. I suspect that would not be a good strategy, but it would be funny.
So, why don't we see what these two players might be up to after game 1, and potentially we've got quite a lot of in and out and shake it all about to do. Even Floch, here's his sideboard. Let's see what the options are. So, 4 Nyx Fleece Ram, 2 Last Breath, an Elspeth, Jace, Deicide, double Dispel, double Gainsay, and a couple of Archangel of Thune. So, Luis, why don't we start with you? What are your thoughts on what Floch might be doing here?
Floch doesn't actually have a ton that he really wants to bring in. Like, he can bring in Jace, he can bring in Elspeth, he can bring in Deicide, he can bring in more Last Breaths. But other than that, I mean, he's not. This isn't. The matchup is so good game 1, and he's got so few dead cards game 1 that this is not really a matchup that improves much post board. In fact, I mean, it improves for Owen post board, and even Floch's deck doesn't even get that much better without caring about what Owen does.
Is Deicide something like where you're worried about Erebos? Like so much of what he ends up doing revolves around resetting his life total.
Yeah, Deicide's quite good. I mean, it kills Erebos and it kills Underworld Connections, so that alone is enough to justify it.
So that's even Floch. Now, on the other side of the table, well, there are quite a lot of dead slots potentially and quite a lot of things to come in. Owen Turtenwald's sideboard looks like this. 3 Duress, the Erebos God of the Dead.
Yes,
single,
yes.
Single Send Collector.
Yes.
Underworld Connections.
Yes.
2 Drown in Sorrow.
No.
2 Last Breath.
Probably not.
3 Doomblade.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, even I wouldn't sideboard those in. And 2 Deicide.
Yeah, and like BDM said with his chanting after each card, yeah, the first 6 cards come in, the Duresses, the Erebos, the Sync Collector, and the Underworld Connections, for some combination of removal spells that Owen deems least dead.
Now, that sounded pretty miserable. I mean, deems least dead. That implies that there's quite a selection of dead to choose from.
Well, against a deck without Detention Spheres, Deicide's not good, and the Banishing Lights are a lot less good. So even has a particularly hard to sideboard version against for Owen, but this matchup still does get a lot better for Owen. Having Sync Collectors and Duresses and Thought Seizures means that he can, pick apart Even's hand, stop Sphinx's Revelation, maybe take a Dissolve. And then Erebos plus the 4th Underworld Connections means that Owen actually has a good chance of drawing more cards than Even.
All right, give me an idea. If you had to numerically qualify the matchup pre-board and then numerically qualify the matchup post-board, what would those numbers be like?
I think pre-board it's something like 65 to 70% in Even's favor. And I think post-board it's probably something like 55% in Owen's favor.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But
Interesting.
Those are rough guesses based on playing similar matchups.
Right, and that's based largely on the fact that just Owen has so many dead draws in that first
Owen took
game.
out a bunch of 1s on a 1 to 10 scale and put in a bunch of like 9s and 10s. So that's actually really good for him. Whereas Even is not really taking out, like he's taking out 4s for 6s, but that, that doesn't really help a ton.
Right,
So it does swing the matchup a lot.
Right.
Coming into the Pro Tour, Luis, we obviously talk to the big teams, the big names, the regular faces on the Pro Tour. But it's also nice to get a sense of what I might call the ordinary Pro Tour player is thinking. The people who are there at the first time, the people who are back for their 3rd PT out of a PTQ, who don't have access to a big team. And the narrative from them was very much coming in, Mono Black, we think is pretty clearly the best deck. And that if we want to beat that, well, maybe Black-White is a pretty good place to be because we get the advantage of Blood Baron of Viscopa in particular, and obviously that's a big deal as well, and so on. I heard very little from any group coming in this weekend about blue-white control. Was that something that people thought wasn't going to be played a lot? Because to be fair, I didn't see much of it either.
Yeah, we did not expect to face a ton of it. We knew it was going to be there. It's still a good deck. But if I had to guess like how many times I would expect to play it in like the 10 rounds of Constructed, I would say like 0 or 1 times are the 2 most likely outcomes. So of our entire team, actually, Paulo Vitor Domitorosa is the only person who played it, though he did go 7-2-1 in the Constructed part, so it ended up working out pretty well for him.
You see Owen Turtenwald there. He is looking at those 7 cards.
The Underworld Connections.
Yep, and a Mutavault. There's a Desecration
Is that
Demon
enough
there.
to keep a hand?
This looks like a keepable hand. It's not a great hand. It's 2 spells and 5 land, but the Underworld Connections is one of your better spells, and Demon is a good threat. It's actually good against even Floch's hand.
Yeah, even Floch has Temple of Enlightenment.
2 Last Breaths. And I
Hallowed
think maybe
Fountain.
a Supreme Verdict.
Yep, he's got 2 Last Breaths and a Supreme Verdict, which actually don't match up all that well, though. Looks like he may have just drawn a Deicide, which would be kind of what he's looking for here. Or though it might have actually been a Guildgate. So something along those lines.
Deicide or Guildgate.
So straight into action, the Mutavault.
New iPhone app coming out soon.
Yeah.
Mutavault already done some work on the life total front, but this time is needed on the mana side for that turn 3 Underworld Connections, which Floch can do nothing about.
And Owen might run away from the game very quickly here. On unanswered connections, I mean, Owen's at this point not drawing any dead cards. All his spells are good. So, and even just on all reactive cards, no card draw, no answers to connections. I mean, this is what the post-board games can kind of look like sometimes.
Right. And we know Owen will have the mana to operate all the cards he's drawing because he had a lot of lands in his opening hand.
Presumably, though, even sitting on the other side of the table already knows that that's the kind of thing that can happen against a deck like this, and he kept his opening hand, so was comfortable with that. So
here
presumably,
comes a Sin Collector.
Ooh, hello. Yep.
And a Duress on legs is actually a lot better than Duress in this matchup in particular. If you knew you were playing against a lot more
The
blue.
ability on the stack? Yeah, sure. I'm gonna draw one. Okay. 18.
Why would he do that? I guess he just wants more information
for his
about
own
what
hand.
card he's going to select.
He wants to know whether a Sync Collector resolves first before drawing a card. Because he wants to play around Syncopate as well. But even didn't have a Syncopate last turn for connections, but no reason to not play around Syncopate.
I'm at 17 right now. No, 9, 17.
Do you just take the planar cleansing here, which is going to be the only answer to your underworld connections?
Yeah, you do want it here, so.
At this point, I would assume that planar cleansing is the pick. I mean, there's 2 last breaths, and you're not finishing the game with your Sync Collector anyway.
Right, right.
So, and Supreme Verdict on Sync Collector is not a big deal, but Sync Collector is very good here. I mean, like I started to say before, we started to see Even's hand. If you knew you're going to play against blue-white a lot more, Sync Collector is much better than Duress because it actually 2-for-1s them. It forces them to deal with it. They have no blockers. But the fact that Duress is a lot better in other, a wider range of matchups means you can't afford to play too many Sync Collectors.
So blue-white pretty well positioned as it turned out for Even Floch. Obviously, he played it terrifically.
Yeah, they had, I believe, 4 players on their team is what Frank said play blue-white. So he was the one who performed best out of all of them.
There goes the planar cleansing.
Go.
Underworld Connections does pressure planar cleansing a lot better than it does the Detention Sphere version. If that planar cleansing was a sphere, that Underworld Connections would have already been gone.
22.
Last breath takes out the Sin Collector at the end of the turn there.
Yeah, no real reason not to at that point particularly. Obviously, there is a Mutavault still over there for Owen.
Yeah, but Floch has another last breath, and there's no way Owen's really going to overextend into Supreme Verdict now that he's seen it. He's content doing 2-4 damage a turn.
Yep.
So what card does Floch want to see right now on top of his deck?
Not Rev, actually. You actually just don't want to draw Rev until like the middle to late game because it just gets duressed earlier or thought seized. You'd like to see like Jaces would be good or Divinations, all the like small card draw spells. Wouldn't hate seeing a Dissolve either. Though with Underworld Connections, that actually he probably just wants to see Deicide. That's probably his best card to draw. Just killing Underworld Connections at least puts them on even footing.
Go.
Desecration Demon. There you see it.
Floch's thinking.
Any opponent, in this case even Floch, can sacrifice a creature.
I think Floch was trying to sell that he had a counterspell there. I don't know how successful it was because Owen knows how likely that is, and Floch's like overlong pause, I think, may have given it away. I would not necessarily try it against all players in the Pro Tour.
Sometimes referred to as Hollywooding.
Yeah, Hollywooding is definitely the sort of thing that gets overused. Owen has built up a very nice hand in the last couple turns. I mean, drawing 2 cards a turn does that, but between Duress and Pack Rat, he's got credible other threats. He's got an Elspeth waiting, so at this point, Owen is doing pretty well.
So we see a Duress now from Owen Turtenwald.
I'm going to do Quicken Supreme Verdict here.
That is my guess, because you don't really want to just get hit by a demon. It hits so hard. So I think you want to Quicken, you want a Verdict, and then you hope that Sphinx Revelation is lurking in the top couple cards of your deck. But again, you didn't want to draw it earlier.
Because right now, Floch is down to land. We said at the start of the day that he just wants to keep on playing land turn after turn. He's going to be able to do that. It's whether he's going to be able to do anything else against an opponent who is drawing 2 cards a turn.
And Pack Rat will kill Even Floch in just like 2 to 3 turns. So Even's going to need to draw a Supreme Verdict or a Planar Cleansing, or he's just going to be dead.
He would really prefer the Planar Cleansing at this point. He just doesn't want to have to deal with that Underworld Connections for much longer. Do you want to give us an idea of what, now that we know exactly how Owen has sideboarded, what happened?
Yeah, Owen took out just a whole pile of removal spells: Banishing Light, Ultimate Price, Bile Blight, Devour Flesh for Duress, Erebos, Sync Collector, and Underworld Connections. Just those are the very clear anti-control cards he's got in the air. And that is a lot, better sideboarding matchup-wise for Owen than Floch. I mean, if you look at Floch, took out 2 Syncopates, a Quicken, and a Mutavault, all cards which are perfectly fine. For Last Breath, Elspeth, and Deicide, cards which are good, but again, not huge power level upgrades here.
Right. So Owen made a second rat at the end of Even's turn and is really able to start doing some damage here.
He's got 2 Mutavaults on the board.
Yeah, and with double Mutavault, the Pack Rats are actually just lethal next turn. So Owen, he probably will just go for it if Even doesn't do anything on his turn.
Right. I don't know how many people who are listening haven't played with Pack Rat, but let's explain that to people. He can make another Pack Rat, put them both to 3/3, and then activate each Mutavault, even just not using them to attack, just animating them to make them into rats, and get in for 10. He just plays another rat, the cheaper route.
Yeah, the cheaper rat. And he can even do that without really risking a quick and Supreme Verdict too much here.
So in comes the team.
He's cracking for 14 here, which is going to add up. I mean, at this point, Owen, so now next turn he can attack with the rats without attacking with Mutavaults. Those are already lethal. Even has to have Quicken, Verdict, or Planar Cleansing.
Nope.
And then there we have it. The turn after that, Owen would threaten lethal with Mutavaults, even if the rats got dealt with. So even needed a pretty incredible sequence of cards to win that.